Europe, 1940. The sky over London was a dark canvas, streaked with the shadows of warplanes. Hitler's Third Reich had spread its tentacles across the continent, leaving behind smoke, rubble, and fear. Ordinary people moved through the streets like ghosts, unsure whether they would return home after each air raid. The air was thick with tension, yet behind the scenes, a quiet battle of ingenuity was unfolding, one that would change the course of history. In a small, dimly lit laboratory on the outskirts of London, wires crisscrossed the floor like a metallic spiderweb. Strange devices with blinking lights and oscillating components hummed softly, the sound a strange symphony of hope and fear. Among the engineers and scientists working tirelessly was Carlin, a young electrical engineer with a mind as sharp as the circuits he assembled. Carlin had never imagined that his work would someday save thousands of lives, or that a machine of his own creation would play a crucial role in the fate of nations. The device they were working on was no ordinary machine. It was the chain-home radar, Britain's secret weapon against the relentless Luftwaffe. Unlike conventional weapons, this radar did not fire bullets or bombs. It fired information. It could detect enemy aircraft miles away, track their altitude, speed, and trajectory, and provide the British Air Force with the intelligence necessary to intercept attacks before bombs could fall on the city. Night after night, Carlin and his team calibrated and tested the radar arrays. Every wire, every transmitter, every receiver mattered. A single miscalculation could render the machine useless or, worse, fail to warn the city of an impending raid. The stakes were unimaginably high, yet the engineers worked tirelessly, fueled by a sense of purpose that transcended personal safety. The first real test came one cold, foggy evening. Radar screens flickered with faint blips, and then, suddenly, a cluster of signals appeared on the scopes. Enemy bombers, their engines faint but unmistakable, were approaching from the north. Carlin's hands trembled slightly as he relayed the data to the operations room. Within moments, fighter planes were scrambled, vectoring precisely toward the incoming threat. The radar had done its job. The city remained safe that night, largely unnoticed by its grateful residents, but silently, a miracle had been enacted. As weeks passed, the chain-home radar proved itself repeatedly. Each successful detection was a small victory, a lifeline to thousands of civilians who slept a little easier knowing that unseen eyes were watching over the city. But it wasn't just the physical protection that mattered. The radar had a psychological impact, too. The Luftwaffe began to notice that their raids were often anticipated, their plans consistently thwarted. Confusion, frustration, and uncertainty began to seep into enemy strategy. The invisible war had begun. Carlin's work was more than engineering. It was artistry. Each adjustment, each test, was a stroke of genius, blending science with intuition. The radar's success relied on the brilliance of its designers, but also on the bravery of those who dared to trust a machine in a world dominated by human conflict. Behind the blinking lights and oscillating waves was a profound truth. Technology, when wielded with precision and courage, could save lives, even in the darkest of times. The team's efforts culminated in the interception of a major Luftwaffe bombing formation targeting central London. Carlin's radar tracked each plane, providing exact coordinates to the defenders above. The fighter pilots, guided by this invisible hand, met the enemy in the skies. Explosions, smoke, and the roar of engines filled the night, but the city below remained largely untouched. Thousands of lives were spared in those critical hours, an extraordinary feat accomplished not with bombs, but with the invisible eyes of the chain-home system. By the end of 1940, the radar had become an indispensable part of Britain's defense. Carlin, exhausted but determined, reflected on the magnitude of what they had achieved. In the midst of human suffering, their invention had created moments of hope, turning the tide of battles in subtle yet profound ways. The city slept a little safer, the pilots fought a little wiser, and the enemy's plans were foiled again and again, all thanks to the quiet genius of a machine and the minds that brought it to life. The birth of the radar miracle was complete, yet this was only the beginning. What lay ahead would test Carlin and his team in ways they could never have imagined. The stakes were about to rise, the enemy would escalate, and the radar would play a role not only in defense, but in revealing secrets that could change the course of the war.
Turning the tide of war. The year was 1941, and Europe's skies had become an ever-present battlefield. The Luftwaffe intensified its relentless campaigns, raining destruction upon cities across Britain and testing the limits of human endurance. For Carlin and his colleagues, every day in the laboratory was a race against time, a battle of intellect against the machinery of tyranny. They knew that each signal, each blip on the radar screen, could mean the difference between life and death for countless civilians below. The chain-home radar, once an experimental wonder, had now matured into a fully operational network. Its towers, stretching along the southern and eastern coasts of Britain, acted like a vigilant chorus, scanning the skies from miles away. Carlin often stood among the antennae, listening to the soft whir of the rotating arrays and feeling the electric pulse that signaled another incoming raid. There was an almost poetic rhythm to the war of machines, an invisible symphony that would determine the fate of nations. One crisp autumn evening, the radar detected an unusually large formation of enemy bombers approaching the southeast coast. The signals were erratic, suggesting sophisticated tactics designed to evade detection. Carlin's pulse quickened. He knew that this could be a pivotal moment in the war. Using the radar's data, the operations room plotted the exact course and altitude of each bomber. Fighter squadrons were scrambled, vectors calculated to intercept with unerring precision. As the British pilots soared into the smoky twilight, the radar continued to feed them real-time information. Enemy formations attempted to scatter and deceive, but Chain-Home's ability to track multiple targets simultaneously proved decisive. One by one, the bombers were intercepted, their attacks neutralized before they could reach London. The city remained largely untouched, and Carlin's team celebrated in quiet triumph. For them, victories were measured not in headlines, but in lives spared. But the radar's true potential went far beyond defensive maneuvers. Intelligence officers began to notice a pattern. The data from Chain-Home could reveal more than just positions of aircraft. It could expose enemy plans, troop movements, and strategic intentions. With meticulous analysis, British codebreakers and intelligence units started piecing together fragments of Nazi operational strategy. What was once a tool for air defense had now become a key instrument in a broader intelligence war. Carlin's work took on new urgency. Each day, the team enhanced the radar's sensitivity, experimenting with signal processing and refining algorithms that would allow operators to distinguish between different types of aircraft. By adjusting frequency modulation and antenna orientation, they could determine bomber size, formation patterns, and even predict flight paths. It was an engineering marvel, and yet it was still operated by human hands, driven by human insight. In the winter of 1942, a particularly daring Luftwaffe mission threatened the heart of England. Hundreds of bombers approached in coordinated waves, intending to cripple Britain's industrial hubs. Carlin and his colleagues worked feverishly, monitoring each blip on the radar screens. As the enemy drew closer, the Chain-Home system fed precise information to anti-aircraft batteries and fighter squadrons. Pilots engaged the bombers in fierce combat above the Thames, while civilians huddled in shelters below. By nightfall, the battle was over. The Luftwaffe had suffered devastating losses, many planes shot down or forced to retreat. Carlin allowed himself a rare smile. The radar had not only defended the city, it had turned the tide of the battle, demonstrating the power of foresight, science, and meticulous preparation. Reports later credited the radar with saving thousands of lives, though the public remained largely unaware of its role. But the war was far from over. Intelligence reports revealed that Nazi engineers were attempting to develop countermeasures: new radar jamming technology, electronic deception, and innovative aircraft designs meant to bypass detection. Karlin realized that the chain-home system would need constant innovation to remain effective. His nights grew longer, his work more intense as the stakes reached unimaginable heights. Every test, every tweak, every calibration was now a matter of survival. Amidst these trials, Karlin reflected on the nature of warfare. He had never seen the front lines in person, never fired a weapon in anger, yet his work was instrumental in shaping the battlefield. The quiet, unseen war in the laboratories was as crucial as the chaos above the clouds. He understood that heroism could take many forms. Sometimes it was measured in bravery in the streets, sometimes in courage in the mind, in the subtle dance of electrons and signals that could avert disaster. By 1943, the chain-home radar had become an integral part of Allied strategy. The information it provided allowed the British to anticipate enemy attacks, coordinate defensive strikes, and even support Allied offensives on the continent. Karlin and his team were now recognized as pivotal contributors to the war effort. Awards, letters of commendation, and discreet acknowledgments flowed in from high command, though public acclaim remained limited. Their satisfaction came from knowing that their creation had changed the course of the war. The final test came in 1944, during preparations for the liberation of occupied Europe. Karlin's radar network provided crucial intelligence that guided the deployment of Allied forces, tracked enemy reinforcements, and revealed hidden defensive positions. The precision and reliability of the system enabled daring operations that would have been impossible otherwise. Soldiers on the front lines credited unseen technology for saving lives and securing strategic advantages. As the war drew to a close, Karlin reflected on the magnitude of what had been accomplished. The chain-home radar had not only defended a nation, it had revealed secrets, protected countless civilians, and helped shape the outcome of a global conflict. He understood that the work of engineers, scientists, and visionaries, those who labored far from the battlefield, could be as heroic as the actions of soldiers in combat. In the quiet years that followed, Karlin recounted his experiences, emphasizing the lessons of ingenuity, perseverance, and courage. He spoke of the power of unseen heroes, of technology wielded wisely, and of the delicate interplay between human intellect and mechanical precision. The radar was more than a machine. It was a testament to the triumph of human ingenuity under pressure, a silent guardian whose impact resonated far beyond its blips and screens. Karlin often walked along the remnants of the old radar towers, now monuments to an era of extraordinary innovation. The skies above were peaceful, yet he remembered the countless nights of tension, the sound of engines, the flickering signals, and the knowledge that his work had made a difference. It was a legacy of hope and resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest times, brilliance and courage could illuminate the path forward. The story of the crazy radar that exposed Nazi secrets was complete. It was a tale of invention, courage, and unseen heroism. A story of how a group of dedicated engineers, led by one brilliant mind, used science to outsmart one of history's most formidable adversaries. And though the world might never fully know the names of those who labored in shadow, the impact of their work would endure forever, a testament to the power of human ingenuity in the face of unimaginable odds.